Do you know Eugenio Maria de Hostos, the great thinker of the Americas? Of course you do. But have you heard of his youngest daughter, Maria Angelina de Hostos y de Ayala? Her story is that of a silent giant, a pivotal figure in Puerto Rico's cultural resistance, who incredibly has been erased from our collective memory. Known in her family as Little Ida, Maria Angelina was not just the devoted daughter of a national hero. She was a formidable educator, shaped by her father's ideals, an education grounded in reason, science, and equality. Maria Angelina grew up in exile, moving through Chile, Argentina, and the Dominican Republic. She faced the hardships of a nomadic family, persecuted for her father's nationalist ideals. While her brothers took on more visible roles, she chose the most powerful and discreet weapon: chalk and the chalkboard. Maria Angelina had no children on record. Her legacy lived on through her work as an educator and her efforts to preserve her father's memory, at a time when the government was suppressing information about patriotic leaders. She returned to Puerto Rico after 1899, at the very outset of U.S. rule, and confronted a system that sought to impose English and erase her identity. What did she do? She devoted herself to teaching in poor communities, rural and urban alike. At a time when Puerto Rican women had limited access to professional roles, she defied gender norms by educating girls and young women within a school system that promoted critical thinking and Puerto Rican identity. She didn't just teach them to read and write, she taught them to think critically and value their Puerto Rican heritage. In an era of cultural assimilation, each of her classes was an act of resistance. But her work didn't end in the classroom. Her focus on girls and women's education helped lay the groundwork for later generations of women to enter the teaching profession, strengthening women's presence in Puerto Rican cultural life. While the colonial government tried to diminish the stature of independence heroes, Maria Angelina systematically organized, edited, and published the complete works of her father, Eugenio Maria de Hostos. Thanks to her efforts, texts such as Moral Social and La Peregrinación de Bayoán became pillars of patriotic thought. She helped turn Hostos from an intellectual into a national symbol, inspiring generations to fight for justice and Puerto Rican identity at a time when Puerto Rico lacked strong cultural institutions to make that possible. So why don't we know more about her? Why don't we know for certain where she's buried or how she died? Her invisibility is no accident. It's the result of a country that tells its stories by exalting men while forgetting the women who, through everyday life, sustained culture and resistance. Not knowing where Maria Angelina is buried or what she died of reflects how the government silenced a family whose views differed. They paid the price of exile and of a bias that, over time, erased from public memory the women educators who preserved our culture. Maria Angelina de Hostos embodies the women-led pedagogical resistance that kept her father's ideas from remaining on the page and turned them into living practice in our schools. Remembering her isn't just doing right by her. It's the beginning of understanding that Puerto Rico's history was also written in classrooms, through the quiet courage of teachers and keepers of our public memory like her. Teachers like Maria Angelina defended instruction in Spanish and brought the symbols of our culture into the classroom so that future generations would not forget their Puerto Rican roots after U.S. citizenship was granted in 1917. For that reason, she deserves recognition in her own right, not as a secondary figure. Thank you for joining us. If you found this important, hit like, share this video, and subscribe so we can keep unearthing the forgotten stories of the women who changed Puerto Rico's history. See you next time.